standing in what was the billiard room of a magnificent manor house called Plaisance that stood sentinel over the east of St Helier for decades. Most of that manor house doesn't exist anymore, and this is the only remaining part, all because of the man whose portrait I was just staring at, Thomas Benjamin Davis. As a young boy, him and his friend were out in the gardens of the manor house, and they were looking for conkers, chestnuts, to play games with. But unfortunately, they were caught by the owner of the manor house, Jurat Joshua George Falle. And the Jurat managed to collar Thomas Benjamin, or TB as we'll call him, and he dragged him into the manor house and placed him in a cellar which is just below our feet. And he forced him to shine his boots. He let him out at the end of the day, and the young TB Davis turned round to the Jurat, the judge, and said in very colourful language, which he was known for even from a young age, "When I'm older, I'm going to buy this effing house from you, and I'm going to tear it down, stone by effing stone." And he lived up to that promise, because he left Jersey, made a fortune, returned, and he bought the whole manor house from the Jurat's daughter, Lily. And what did he do? He tore it down, stone by stone, only keeping this remaining part. Now, what that story does is it relegates Jurat Joshua Falle to a miserly curmudgeon, someone who is grumpy and likes to unnecessarily be rude and strict with children. And unfortunately, I think that's doing a great disservice to Joshua Falle, who we should resurrect. He is one of the great politicians to have ever existed in Jersey. I would say he's the greatest Conservative politician that we've ever had. Who was he? Well, he was one of the Falle family of St Saviour. His family had built an empire trading Newfoundland cod, and his two uncles were running that business when he was young, and they disappeared in the Atlantic Ocean one day, transporting cod from Newfoundland back to Portugal. And he, as a young man, had to go to Newfoundland and run this business, and he was extremely successful. So successful that he ended up becoming a member of the assembly in the House in Newfoundland. He was extremely well thought of. So by the time he returned to Jersey in the 1860s, he was wealthy, he was world wise, and he was ready to contribute to the island that he loved so much. He became a constable in St Helier, in the parish we're standing in, and he was that for 9 years. He built the town hall, he restored the town church, he built Lower People's Park, and a contemporary said of him that he was the most distinguished constable this town has ever known. He used to ride from the manor house here to his work astride a black stallion. That's a serious flex. And no doubt everyone was seriously impressed by him. But when he finished as constable in 1873, he finished for a very important reason. One of the dominant Jurats in the island had been found to be embezzling funds, and he'd been sentenced to 7 years penal servitude. The island needed a Jurat they could rely on, and Jurat Falle was voted in almost unanimously. There were only 2 votes against him across the whole island. And from that moment in 1873, for the next 30 years, he led the Conservative Party in the state and was one of the leading Jurats in the royal court. He strenuously, vigorously, and courageously defended the ancient constitution of this island, our liberties, our freedoms, and our ancient rights against the influx and flood of British and English people arriving in this island, demanding that it became more like Britain. And he fought to keep what was ours. And he did that for 30 years, dying in this building in 1905. He is a great lesson that politicians need thick skin. And we have been telling a story that casts him in a very negative light over the last 121 years since his death. And we need to resurrect him because he's one of our leading lights.